This is Pete Moore on Halo Talks NYC. I have the pleasure of bringing Josh from TXV Partners. We're going to talk about early stage investments. We're going to talk about things we should or shouldn't have done in the past. We're going to give people a crash course on being an entrepreneurial investor and angel or strategic. Maybe some of those things don't really mesh together, but we'll find out with Josh today. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to have a good chat today.
Awesome. So, we reached out to you because you basically embody what we're trying to do, which is the Halo, acronym and make people better than they were before, and then basically pass that on a domino effect. So maybe give people your background on what you've done with human performance, and then how that kind of brought you to, the light side of investing, we'll call it.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background, grew up in a real small town called Lake Geneva, about an hour and a half north of Chicago. My childhood was the heart of the Jordan years. So I was obsessed with basketball. You couldn't tell me any different. I was going to play for the Bulls and kind of held on to that dream for way too long. But as a byproduct of that, I really fell in love with the process of working out and training myself. Anything and everything I could do to become a better basketball player. So probably around late high school, although I wasn't willing to admit that I wasn't going to make that dream come true, I was still holding on to it. I was at least wise enough to say, hey, what if I don't play for the Bulls? What then? What's another way in? What could I do? And so this was, I graduated high school 2001. So we're talking late 90s, early 2000s. And I kind of stumbled upon that you could be a strength and conditioning coach, director of performance for an NBA team. And so from there, that just seemed like the perfect fit for me. And, I started studying who are the people in positions that I hope to one day get to, and what was their path. And so in doing that, that put me in a really good position where my very first job out of college was actually an internship with the Bulls. And so from there, I'm 22. I'm an unpaid intern. You couldn't tell me any different. I made it. I had my dream job at that point, which I think also was really powerful for me, for that to happen at such, at the very start of my career, because already it got me to start thinking, well, if this is all I set out to do, then I really set the bar way too low.
Well, I mean, getting on the squad at 22 as an intern, at least you're now in the pro league. It's not like you're trying to build up to that. I think there's a guy, Dana Cavalaria, who was the coach for the Yankees. I think he was in Tampa going to college. Basically, just like walked up to the spring training and said, like, "Hey, you need anybody to help out? Raps or something." And the guy. We're good friends with Steve Watterson, who was the strength and conditioning coach for the Tennessee Titans for a long time.
Oh yeah. So those are two of the guys that I don't know either of them, but as I was going through my process, those are two of the guys I actually looked up to and kind of studied. Where had they been? How did Dana get to the Yankees? What can I, Yeah.
A lot of it's just, hustle and like being a little bit gregarious.
It is.
People. As you look at, one thing before I move on, we wrote a book called Time to Win Again, 52 Takeaways from Team Sports to Show Business Success. We'll send you a copy if you don't have it. But we wrote that book after The Last Dance. We were working on bankruptcies during COVID, and we said, oh my God, like we could take time to pause, actually help these businesses think like they're actually running a pro team. Each season you can reload your staff. Tell me you give it a 1-year contract and then reshuffle the deck. Take time outs, which nobody takes, right, to fix things. And head of human resources should be director of player personnel, no matter what company you have in one industry. So I'd love to get a copy of the book to you. So how did you end up getting to where you were? And then you showed some stats on a couple of your LinkedIn articles and posts that I found really intriguing, where you're looking at player uptime, basically, almost like a SaaS software company saying, like, I'm going to guarantee 99.98% uptime. And you actually did that with humans. So talk about what your special sauce was, or how you thought about each person.
Yeah. So I'll unpack that. One, how I got to where I was and having that opportunity so early was, like you said, just hustling, and having humility to understand where I was in the game. Within that, meaning I knew nothing.
Right.
And so I sought out anybody and everybody who might know a little bit more than me, which was, anybody I came across that was affiliated with gyms or teams or, anything like that. And just made the most of every introduction, every opportunity, and also wasn't afraid to just, ambitiously, optimistically reach out to people that I had no business getting a response from, because the worst thing that could happen is I don't get a response, but also I would follow up if I didn't get a response. And so that was kind of a product of one opportunity leading to the next, which put me in a position. My last year of undergrad, I was able to be a student assistant at University of Wisconsin. And the only reason that came was because I refused to take no as an answer for 2 years straight. I kept asking them if there was an opportunity. If they had no internship program, they had no volunteer, they'd never done that before, which is why they kept telling me no. I just wouldn't leave it alone. I wouldn't accept that answer. And finally they relented. And so that was kind of the thing that, kicked off my career. And then the second part of your question, you're referring to the success we had once I moved on to Purdue. And so, I spent 4 years. First year as an intern, the final 3 years, I was the assistant strength coach for the Bulls. Then I left and took over as the director of performance for men's basketball at Purdue. And over the course of the 7 seasons that I was there, across every single player that we had, across every single game that we played, there's a combined total of 2,511 game opportunities, meaning, you multiply players by the number of games. Of that, we had 6 games missed collectively across all of our players for some type of non-contact or soft tissue injury. The things that nothing's preventable, but the things that you maybe have a little bit more control with. And, I think it's a pretty loaded question of how we had that success. I would be remiss if I didn't say, I think there's probably a lot of good luck and good fortune in that, but inside of it, I think it really was rooted in starting and building a very strong foundation. And so the analogy that I always give as it relates to physical development and training is, if you think about, if you were to learn calculus, well, if you don't know how to count, if you don't know how to add and subtract, you have to go through this process before you can ever get to calculus. I can't just throw you into calculus and expect you to learn it. And the same thing is true with training. It is true for all of us, but it's especially true at those elite levels. And what often happens when you're working with top college and pro athletes is people will mistake their athleticism, because you're dealing, especially in basketball, very, very athletic guys and girls. And so it's easy to fool yourself. This guy can jump 35 inches fast as all get out, that they can also do very advanced things in the weight room in training. And that's often not the case, and so you have to first spend a lot of time to find where everyone is at, break it down to the individual, and you kind of go from a very general program, and then you earn the right, or the athletes, through their training habits and their progress, they earn the right for it to start to become much more detailed, much more individualized. And so, we kind of started there with just, we got to get them to move properly, irrespective of load or how much weight, or none of that's relevant. Just holding positions, moving right. And then from there, now we can start to layer on, maybe some different technologies that are telling us more specifically how a guy is responding to not just our training, but also practices, games, things like that. Just having conversations with them asking them, very simply every day, on a scale of 1 to 5, how well did you sleep? How sore are you? What's your, those basic things. And what you're doing there is you're just collecting a lot of information about each individual. And then you're kind of testing to find, because different things are going to work for different guys. And within that process, I think one of the things that really set us apart is I made a big emphasis that this is a partnership. It's not a dictatorship. It's not just me telling you what to do, but it's me empowering you to start to make your own decisions, because you recognize how your body responds and what you need. And so the progress for us, and what I think led to the success we had of the health of our players, was, as they come in as freshmen, I was more or less dictating, hey, here's what you need to do. Here's how we're adjusting. But then I was challenging them to start to take the reins. And all of our guys, by call it their junior year, that kind of flipped, where they start to come in and they're telling me what they're going to do. And so part of that too within training is, and again, it's true for all of us, but it's magnified at that level, is especially when you're in season, you have to hit a moving target. So you can have this like even a week-long plan, but if you try to, put a month-long plan or anything like that, it'll last a day, and then you're going to blow the whole thing up, because life happens.
Let me take where you're at and all that, testing new technologies, thinking about programming. We work with a guy up in Canada for a little while named Tony Greco. He focuses on hockey players and does a lot of function and movement and working those muscles on everything from, the face off to being in the corners, like specific movements that you do on the ice. As you take all the learnings that you had a great, foundation from professional and college. So any of the new technologies that look like they could become quote unquote game changers, you had access to those to see if they were really working. So when you start working now on the early stage side, angel side, what are some of the things, maybe as an example, where you're saying like, hey, we saw this company, I kind of knew where this was going. And we invested in that based on, I know what's going to work and what's going to resonate with trainers and with strength and conditioning coaches. And I know some things are just kind of not really solving a frustration, but they're just basically like a new gadget.
Yeah. It's a really good question. I think throughout my time with the Bulls and at Purdue, that was, you're talking late 2000s through like 2010s. My last year at Purdue was 2018. So I think I was fortunate to see the first versions of a lot of these technologies, kind of the first attempts, and they were probably one or the other. One, way too expensive, or two, not there yet. Sounded great in theory, made a bunch of promises, and then you actually got that technology in your hands and started using it, and you realize, oh, wow, it says it can tell me all of this different stuff, but actually the technology isn't fully developed to the point that the data that's coming from it is not just valid, but actually reliable. And so now, and that was happening, especially throughout the 2010s, there were a lot of companies out there, technology companies, whether it be GPS or heart rate or, monitoring sleep, that were making all these bold claims. And you actually saw some number of high-level sports scientists and performance directors throughout, elite sport, who I think in good faith, they wanted to believe that this data was accurate. And so they're making whole-scale decisions, and almost too letting the data dictate the decision of what they're doing, when in reality, the data is meant to inform the questions that you ask to lead to the decision that you get to. And so I think for me, what was unique was getting to see that evolve, and also developing a much more critical eye for, okay, this all sounds great. It actually sounds too good to be true. So now I have to very closely monitor if this, product actually does the thing that it says it does. But, I think where I saw early was just being able to, we were the first team in college basketball, one of the first 3 in the US to use GPS units with all of we use Stat Sports GPS with all of our players every single practice. And,
To see how far they're, how many miles?
Yeah, exactly.
Soccer.
Everything, how many times they change direction, how fast they're running, and then it manages or it informs you of all these different loads that they're enduring with. And what's really interesting and what you really start to click in on is, even if you take a position group, even if you take guards who in a 2-hour practice, they do every drill together, they're in all the same, everything.
Really?
At the end of it, it looked vastly different in terms of the toll that it took on their body. And what was really interesting is when you started to then tie that to, we're also looking at their heart rate throughout every practice. I was doing stuff at times to try to monitor, how they were sleeping, especially in really stressful periods, or again, just the simple subjective type stuff where every single day I was having them rate their soreness and their mood and all of that. And when you started to bring those things together is where you started to really learn a lot to impact the decisions you're making around training and recovery, but also the lifestyle decisions.
Right.
Especially there, it's college kids, and I think that's a good example as it relates to the rest of us, like kind of the consumer market. Is college kids haven't learned to like be off on their own, be adults. Like they don't know how to cook for themselves. They don't know how to, have good sleep hygiene and stuff like this. And so, you had to use that information to start to find, like, I can't change everything all at once. I can't change how they sleep, how they eat, how they, all of that. So what that technology did, and having that individualized data is you start to recognize, okay, what's the, what's the biggest barrier to their success right now? What's, the thing that's most out of whack, and let's kind of start there, because that can influence the other things. And so as it relates now to especially investing, it's, trying to look at a lot of these different new products and technologies, and one, almost come at it initially like overly skeptical of whether or not it can actually do.
Start off saying like, I don't want to do this deal. Convince me that's my new MO. Let me go through a couple things with you, because I want to get a couple things out to the audience here. One is, angel investing or venture investing. After I turned 40, I figured like, hey, I know everything I need to do. I'm not going to make any mistakes. I'm going to bat 1,000. I'm batting like 250, maybe 300 max. When you go into a deal in this venture firm, does that come up in a meeting? Say like, look, we're gonna put 10 bets out there, and one of them could be the next Aura, which you guys invested in. One of them could be Future, and there's going to be ones that we're going to have to unwind. We're going to have to let them go. We're going to have tough conversations. How do you think about that? Or how does a venture firm, make these bets and know that we're having some losses, or else we can't make these bets?
Yeah. So, we are really fortunate. We have a few people on our team who are like absolute mathematical wizards. So they run all these different models, throwing different numbers into it. And, basically what it is it allows you to form a portfolio construction model. And it's going to be very different every firm, based on how much money are you investing, what's the stage you're investing, what check sizes. And you're basically playing off, or at least how we look at it, is you're playing off of like the law of large numbers, effectively. And so, for our limited partners, who are the ones that are investing into our funds, and now it's our responsibility to return that money. The reason why they invest into venture is it's a very risky asset class, but within that, when you do well, it's a very asymmetric reward. And so, to your point, and using a baseball analogy, if you hit a bunch of singles and doubles and you're batting, 600, that sounds amazing. But in venture, you're going to be a failed fund. You have to, if you have 10 at bats, you got to swing for the fences every single time in the hopes that one or two of those are a home run and the other 8 or 9 times you're striking out.
So let me ask you this question. So the firm, yeah, I looked at the backgrounds of the professionals there. What did they find you? Did you find them? And what role do you play? You know, if I was a fly on the wall in an investment committee, it'd be saying, Josh, you know, is this thing going to actually get to the, you know, the trainers? Is this going to resonate? Is this price point? Could that get through? Is this too early, even though it's an early stage deal? You know, is this a 10-year thing that we don't want to fund into perpetuity? So what brought you there? Because you have a unique background that I think more and more venture firms and private equity firms are getting resident experts that actually work for them. And
Absolutely.
They don't want to go into a deal saying like, oh, we didn't know that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, you know, when I left Purdue, I got recruited to go help co-found company you mentioned, Future. And so TXV was one of our earliest investors in Future. And coincidentally, it was actually the very first investment they ever made, Marcus and Brandon, my co-founders at TXV. And so what was really like fortunate for me was they had so much skin in the game with us at Future that, you know, especially for someone like me coming from the sports world, being a strength coach, I have no idea how to build a startup. I'm just figuring it out as I go. And Marcus, who's our CEO, was, you know, wanting to do everything that he could to help his investment in Future grow. And so we very quickly connected, started to have like a weekly one-on-one from when I very first started at Future. And he was just helping me, you know, figure out all the challenges of scaling a company, which, you know, over 5 years, we were able to scale from seed to we raised Series C close to 2 years ago. And I personally hired a team of several hundred people. And so Marcus was very instrumental to me of like becoming a mentor. And through that process, I was able to learn a lot about TXB and what he was building and venture, and kind of help have a lot of conversations as he was forming his thesis, which ended up being like very parallel to kind of our thesis at Future. And so, you know, through that process, I was able to come on as a venture partner 2 years ago at TXV, which was my first like dip my toes in the water VC, which that's largely, you know, you're finding deals and maybe supporting here or there, but it's very like part-time, however much time you want to put towards it. And I just found myself very quickly, I fell in love with it because I think it brought that like coach side out of me. I've always been a coach and a connector. Right. And so it gave me an outlet where because of where I sat with Future, I'd been getting connected with all the best founders in the human performance space, but I didn't really have an outlet effectively to support them beyond just advice. And so now as a venture partner, that allowed me to start to bring deals to the firm. We did, you know, a few of those deals. And about 6 months ago, as Future was in a really good spot, we're really well positioned. I've kind of coached myself out of a job with, you know, everyone I've hired and developed to be better than me. It was just a perfect timing to come over full time. So now I'm our head of human performance investing. And so I largely lead a lot of the elements around our early stage portfolio. So, you know, my role is kind of be the first one to go out and find a lot of these deals. So tapping in my network, being resourceful. And also,
one of the interesting things about you doing that is there's a lot of private equity firms and venture firms that just have like a cold call, you know, get kids out of college, and they're just basically calling up CEOs. And it's like, if you call, you know, it comes with like, hey, if we invest, like you get me as part of this, so, you know, like as part of the draft. We've got a couple of deals that we're going to show you because we get a lot of early stage companies that come to us. One of them's a company that is called Menavy. It has a laser which basically spots you on a strength machine. It'll has like a pulley system.
Very cool.
If you can't pull it up, it automatically takes it from you. So we're going to send that to you. They just got their patents. And there's another guy, I think it's Mobius, which is the strength machine like that. sound good for audio, but you see what I was doing, right? Let's tell people.
Yeah, I did.
Back fly, baby. Not a home run. Yeah. So look, I think it's important for you to be in there because you could also take entrepreneurs on a path that's a more direct path to commercialization versus a lot of the mistakes that people make and try to go into parts of the market that maybe look good on paper, but don't, you actually can't penetrate it with any real.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we're going to post up all the information about the firm. We're going to put your information up there. I'd love to meet you in person. Hopefully sooner than later.
That'd be great.
I'm going to actually be down in Austin in 3 weeks. So I'll sync up with you on schedules. Love for you to use the term Halo whenever you feel like it. Health, active lifestyle, outdoors. And happy to welcome you to the capital side of the Halo.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
We're trying to solve obesity, loneliness, and diabetes. And the only way to do that is make sure that the entrepreneurs that have solutions, are able to get capital. And so thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it. Great.
No, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Keep posting good stuff on LinkedIn. It inspires me.
I will. Thank you.
Awesome.